I do want to catch up on some of the shows that I've been watching and kind of clue you in on some of my thoughts there, as we've been doing every now and then here on Into the Spoiler Verse. It is Into the Spoiler Verse this episode, but I will be doing these shows without spoilers. These are more recommendations if you haven't checked them out, or thoughts if you have, but they are spoiler free, so don't worry about that. Well, except for the first one, which is a reality TV show, so that doesn't really count, because are you really going to go back and binge every episode of Celebrity Big Brother, which I'm recording this now after Friday's eviction. So you'll probably hear it after Sunday's episode, but I haven't seen that at the time of recording. And as anyone who listened last year knows, I am a huge Big Brother fan. I actually auditioned for it at one stage in a previous life. And ITV's reboot of the series last year was a huge success for me. It made my top 10 TV shows of the year. So, of course, I'm watching the celebrity version this year. And admittedly, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the initial lineup for this year, which seemed like they kind of blew the budget on Sharon Osbourne and Louis Walsh, and then got a bunch of no names in there. Ekin-su, probably the most recognizable of the rest, but even then, I'd never heard of her until then. But as we head into the final week, the formula for Big Brother just works. And it feels like ITV and the producers of the show really have their arms around this format. As last week, Big Brother decided to kind of twist the knife with face-to-face nominations. And then you had Jelly Bean Roulette, where they had to either eat a sweet or a sour one and say something sweet or sour about the other housemates, shaking up the kind of boring harmony of the house that nobody wants to see. The unraveling of ekin-su, which was kind of the main takeaway from all this. You seem to have a little bit of a princess complex before then, of I'm beautiful and always the center of attention in every room that I go into. Am I great? And isn't life very easy to be nice and to be this person that I want to be? That's exactly what I want from Celebrity Big Brother. Like, let's take these people who are kind of used to the public spotlight, putting on their kind of Disney smiles because they know it gets votes and how to play this games, especially kind of reality star veterans like ekin-su. Let's put a camera on them for 24 hours, challenge them mentally, and deprive them of kind of the levels of sleep and food that they're used to, and see if their mask slips. And that's exactly what happens in ekin-su's case. Face-to-face nominations proved to be the end of her, as she nominated someone who seemed like her best friend in Louis up to that point, and then flipped the fuck out after being nominated by someone that she thought was her friend in Marisha. The hypocrisy, the tantrums. She turned around at one stage and was like, "You can wear the crown." It was delicious. And we saw her go in 24 hours from someone who you could see putting a run together and potentially winning the whole thing just by being one of the actual celebrities people know, to evicted in 24 hours. It was phenomenal. It's a huge endorsement for how, on kind of image centric, highly edited, and really fake environments like Love Island, you can control your image and put that best foot forward, but not in the Big Brother environment. The vote to save element that they've got this year is also fun, meaning that we've kept the likes of Louis in. And I say that not because I particularly like Louis, like his bitchiness and toxicity is having the likes of Jedward amazingly come out and tell all of his secrets while he's in there. But with Sharon having left now as kind of the celebrity lodger because they didn't want to put her up for eviction, because they knew that like her past kind of sins would probably rob them of their most entertaining housemate. But with her gone now, we'd be left pretty stuck for good TV moments in the last week of the show without him. The reality is, though, that the people left are kind of, for me, the worst kind of Celebrity Big Brother housemates, the kind of generic, loud, but really empty and vacuous people who are just dancing and singing loudly, kind of desperate for attention, but without a single actually interesting thing to say. And with that in mind, I looked at the contestants this morning, and I guess I want either Fern or Zizi to win just by not being that kind of prototypical annoying housemate, but also I actually don't want either of them to win. So as we head into the last week, and like I said, I haven't seen Sunday's episode, which you may have when you're listening to this, but that's kind of Big Brother's challenge and job, to make us give a shit about these housemates, which to be fair, they did last year anytime we lost a big personality, and give us enough reasons to care for a deserving winner to emerge. If they do that, then for me, they'll have another unqualified successful series on their hands. Moving on into the more fictional dramas and so on, Masters of the Air wrapped up this week on Apple TV. I reviewed the first half of the series in my last TV catch up if you want to check that out. And it obviously finished its miniseries run on Friday. And there are certain things that when you talk about Masters of the Air that are benchmarks for this show and just remain universally true because that's the show's DNA. For example, it looks absolutely spectacular. This is a show you need to watch in Ultra HD on the biggest screen you can find, and the air battles in particular are cinematic and breathtaking throughout. The period element of it too is fantastic, with amazing kind of costume and set design, making you feel like you're actually living with these people in World War II at times in a way that kind of romanticizes it. Like it feels like an old school war story, but at the same time it romanticizes it without glorifying it as well, without making it as simplistic as kind of the heroes and the villains and the good guys win and the bad guys lose and stuff like that. So the technical aspects are really on point, and it knows how to kind of rev up the adrenaline when it comes time for shit to hit the fan. So the question that I spoke about in the first review of this was, when it comes to Master of Air, was always around if it could get into your heart, if the characters, their hopes, their wishes, their dreams, and their desires connected with them. And there's a lot of characters, so that's a big challenge to do. And in the end, on reflection, the answer was kind of. Like, the show definitely didn't fail. Like, I did love tuning in every week for the last few weeks, and there are some absolutely amazing episodes. Episode 3, one of my favorite episodes of the year. But whereas around that stage from episode 3 to 5, it felt like it's kind of found its groove. The last 4 episodes for me kind of lost its scope a little bit with the story, to the point that it didn't really feel like the same plot that we started with. Like, episode 1 doesn't really feel connected to episode 9 beyond some of the same characters being there. It doesn't feel like it told one long story. Like in episode 8, for example, we introduced a largely black squadron that we'd never met before, have no attachment to. And you look at them and you're kind of like, wow, like you probably could have done an entire show on them. Maybe that could have been series 2. It felt like they kind of yeah a lot of their story and left it up to us to imagine. Like, even kind of there was a point where they were talking about the racism that they undergone, and one character kind of just drew a line with it. And he's like, yeah, I know what my country is, whatever, but I'm still fighting for it. And that was it. And I'm like, okay, I feel like you could have got in deeper there. And it's kind of the risky nature of trying to do a mini series on war stories covering a really wide berth of time. And this essentially covers 2 full years from 1943 to 1945 at the height of World War II. So a lot of the characters that we met in the beginning die. That's not a spoiler. It's a war story. Come on, you knew that was going to happen. Which again, like in the initial episodes when that happened, these are the people we've been introduced in. We're like, oh, that's probably going to be a main character. It made it really shocking, and it made it kind of I don't want to say entertaining television, but you know what I mean. But then you kind of felt like as they were getting towards the end, they had to kind of recycle characters and just parachute people in to just fill airtime and fill everything out. And there were points where I actually couldn't remember who this person was or what their relationship to our kind of core 3 characters was and how they fitted into the grand scheme of things. Like I said, there's no really massively coherent narrative beyond, wow, look at the full scale of war, which, like, yeah, we know, like, war is big and it's horrible, especially a world war. But when the show zooms in into individual missions, like this person needs to get from here to here, and here's where the Nazis could just mess everything up, then it's quite fun and effective. And there's a lot to like, even about how the show has compassion for everyone involved. Like, even like Nazi soldiers, it doesn't say that the Nazis are good people or anything like that, but like, even Nazi soldiers, they kind of paint as these are real people caught in a war. Everyone is a victim of war, which is kind of a take on war that I like, rather than just good guys here, bad guys here. You know, this is my country is good, your country is bad, which I don't know, it's too simplistic for me. And Masters of the Air straddles that line kind of well. But when you ask me what Masters of the Air is actually about in general, all I can really say is war and planes and Austin Butler being a really good alpha male. Like, it's like I said, it's not that it didn't work. I looked forward to watching it every week and I enjoyed every episode. It just felt like it bit off a bit more than it could chew in one seasons. I'd have liked kind of both halves of season 1 to be kind of split into their own seasons and the characters involved to be fleshed out, because it does feel like you have a completely different cast heading into the second half. So that the high points could truly hit emotionally. But look, if you like war stories, or if you're into Top Gun or anything like that as well, Masters of the Air It's a good show. I'd recommend it, but it's just not the home run that I maybe hoped or wanted it to be. Speaking of the show, I'm good it won't have more than one season, but this time only in a positive way. Let's talk about Shogun, which has rocked my world since debuting on Disney Plus a few weeks ago. Husband and wife creators Justin Marks and Rachel Kondo poured water, unfortunately, on a lot of people, such as myself's hopes by revealing that season one of the adaptation will cover all of James Clavell's iconic novel about European invaders of Japan turning the tide in a political civil war, and that season two isn't currently planned. And that's devastating because the show is fucking phenomenal. And if you haven't, you need to get on board with this ASAP. And since Game of Thrones limped to the finish line, there have been so many shows that kind of fancied themselves as the next Game of Thrones. But for me, this is the first one that seems like it can actually hold up to the lofty expectations that sets in your mind. It's impossible not to think about Game of Thrones when you see a show that's filled with political kind of palace intrigue and a race for power among fascinating characters whose motives aren't always clear. And then you have shocking and vicious twists while even making time for some fucking and laughing along the way. Quite early into this, it becomes clear that Cosmos Jarvis is going to become an absolute superstar from this with his turn as British sailor Blackthorn. His line delivery is sensational with every kind of overemphasized word, spitting rage, patriotism, and moxie all in one. And his confusion and ignorance to Japanese culture also brings some much needed levity to it. Like when he became at one point convinced someone was a warlock, and he was like, "What is the warlock saying?" And they're like, "We don't even know what a warlock is." Lord Taranga, played truly by Hiroyuki Sanada, is a classic Game of Thrones enigmatic leader type, keeping his cards really close to his chest, his mind full of plans and schemes that he's not making the viewers or even those around him privy to, but clearly a mastermind capable of doing everything possible to get out of what looks like an impossible political situation that should, in theory, lead to his death. There's some obvious plotting going on here. Like at times there's a love story central to the plot, but the woman involved is married. So you can kind of already, with that setup, do the maths on what's going to happen there. But ultimately, you forgive it because it's so fucking thrilling and fun minute to minute. It is like the world building in it is first class. Like you learn about shocking Japanese customs through horrific plot twists, such as in the opening episode, we learn about seppuku, where one of Taranga's men kind of speaks out of turn during an important daimyo meeting, and for punishment must kill himself and his child. Fuck. That's not a huge spoiler either. Don't worry. Like that's just something that's kind of thrown away. I'm not giving away a big plot twist there. And the benefit to it being a miniseries, as much as I'd love more based on a 1,000-page novel, is that there's so many moments that come at you really quick and fast, and they get to kind of cherry pick the very best lines to highlight. So the writing goes a long way with a little, like with Thrones, where you get really effective quotes that stick with you for ages, like "Chaos is a ladder." Here you get "Death is in our air and sea and earth. It can come for us at any moment." I'm absolutely raging there's not a season two here because I love this show so much already. It is a great addition to my Tuesday nights. But also, if this is a perfect story, you'll hear no complaints from me if they do leave it in one series. It's kind of like Watchmen in that sense, where I'm like, I really would love more because the secret sauce for this was right. They just had the correct recipe for an iconic TV show. But also, I can't criticize you for making a perfect series of television. And that's kind of the range the Shogun's in. I'm really happy to sit back for now and just enjoy the ride and not worry about all that and let everyone involved cook. Like I said, that's Shogun, and you need to check it out.